So I was just thinking, an assessment that we do in kindergarten that is really helpful, and it just that made me something made me just jog my
Uh-huh.
memory. So in kindergarten through I don't know what grade they do it, but we do a running record. Have you ever done running records?
Kind of.
It's so you're listening to them read a passage and you're checking, what words they knew and what they didn't. So I was thinking when we were talking about assessment, a test like that, you'd say, okay, they knew 48 out of 50 words. Okay, but what's nice about like a running record um, test is that you're writing down what happened. Like, did they, sound it out phonetically? Did they skip the first sound? Did they just guess at the word using the first sound? You see, and then you look at the not just the number of how many they got right to give them a percentage to put them in a high group or a low group or whatever, but you're looking at what mistakes that they made,
Yeah.
which is it's kind of fascinating to me because then you go, oh, they're dropping all the ending sounds. Why? And then you can figure it out. Or they're just guessing, looking at the first sound. Okay, they're not using decoding strategies. Or they're every word they're stopping and saying at, at. So they're still at that total decoding part
Right.
of their learning process. So you can see from the data where the issues are and where their strengths and weaknesses are, and then you go back as a teacher, and I have done this and I do this and we do this. We meet with them one on one. We have an instructional aide or an intervention teacher pull them for those skills, or even a parent who comes in to help, working with those skills needed, or like I said, enrichment, and going the other direction. But you can really use that information if it's not just here's the final number and that's for a grade kind of
Yeah,
test.
yeah,
If it
yeah.
has more to it,
Yeah,
you
because
can
it's
really
got all
use
of
it.
the notes and
Yeah,
yeah.
and so for me, taking notes, writing about each scholar. I've kept journals every year about each scholar, and I just kind of take notes, like what do I notice about them? What do they need? And you can really use that to drive what you're doing in the classroom.
When you have a group size of 30, how how hard is I can't because even today with my lesson, I'm planning on doing the group activity of sequencing for
Mhm.
all the kids to do it together.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking in my mind like how can I make this more manageable so they all have the experience?
Mhm.
But with such a large number, it's really hard to pull them together and say we're going to have this experience together because some are going to be
Mhm.
marginalized for one reason or another.
Mhm.
And so it makes me wonder, like when we're doing notes and we're doing um, just anything with this number of students,
Mhm.
how how does that affect your planning? Like how do you deal with that, and how do you manage to keep up with that?
Right. Well, it's hard. With 30 scholars, it's really hard. So for me, when I think of teaching whole group things, it's more of an experience and an experience over and over again when I do it whole group because I know that those scholars who need more are not going to learn it or take it in or feel it and
Yeah.
really absorb it.
Right.
So for me, when I think of teaching something whole group, I do a lot of review whole group, um, or teach a new concept, but then I take that concept the next day and put it in small groups.
Right.
Like I feel I can't do whole group kindergarten teaching
Yeah.
because you cannot meet the needs of those scholars that need more or less or something in between.
Yeah.
So whenever I do whole group, I know in my head that half the scholars aren't going to hear what I said, or half the scholars are
Right.
not going to experience something because of their needs.
Right.
So I always make sure to take it to small group.
Okay.
So like today, I need to teach the phonogram at E because we didn't get to it small group. So I'll teach it whole group, we'll practice it whole group, and then Monday or the next time we
Yeah.
have centers, that will be our focus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Totally.
saying?
Yeah.
So they've heard it once, and the more times the scholars hear things
Yeah.
and experience things, the better. And the same with
Yeah.
the grown-ups for everybody. But definitely, I have to keep that in mind when I do whole group. Say that wasn't good enough. I know it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For
Yeah.
most kids, um, or I do whole group for the scholars that I already know, and they're ready to move on to something else. So that's when
Totally.
you really, you get those groups in what they need, and then the parent and the instructional aide